But what came out of it was that I was really able to clean out the stables a whole lot. I took a big, long look at who is our client list? Where's our money coming from? Are we having fun? Is this leveraging the best parts of the team that we want to keep?
This is Insight, scaling lessons from the street. In this series, we mastermind a set of topics plaguing women entrepreneurs on a mighty growth path, such as mindset, business modeling, sales, marketing, finance, and legal. Whether you're looking for world domination or to work less while being more profitable, you'll find learnings in here from women who know the journey and fight in the trenches every day. Insight is co-hosted by Andrea Henry, Megan O'Neill, Shelagh Cummins, Susan Diaz, and Wendy Brookhouse.
Welcome back to Insight. My name is Shelagh Cummins, and I am one of the co-hosts of this awesome new podcast. This week, we are going to do a deep dive into the topic of failure. And at the time of this recording, everybody is in the process of doing their 2020 planning. They're setting their goals. They're figuring out their power moves. And I'm actually going to challenge all of us to look at 2020, by setting an impossible goal that we're okay failing at. And I'm going to challenge you, the listener, to do the same, because failure is a part of business growth. We have all had failures, some big, some small, some ugly, some fine, but at every single intersection of failure has been a learning opportunity. And if you're going to grow, we got to get you ready to fail. So our very first question is, tell us a little bit about a failure that by all means would have been measured as a failure in your business world, but actually was an opportunity for growth or a learning point for you in your business growth in 2019.
For me, something that seemed a failure or felt a failure at the time was when I started my firm, I started with a business partner. And the partnership did not survive. We realized that we were on the same page, and so we parted ways. And at the time, it really did feel like a failure. We had set up the firm with lots of great ideas about what we were going to do. We had been friends since the age of 11, so it felt very much like I had let my business partner down, things hadn't worked out. But when I look back on it now, it really was the best possible thing for both of us. One, it allowed me to be a lot more authentic in who I was, because I now didn't have to kind of be thinking about, anyone else, and I could be free to be me. I could move the business in the direction that I wanted. And one of my big values, and one of the reasons why I'm in business for myself, is that I really value freedom. So that's why I wasn't that happy, where I needed to check in constantly with someone else. And then my business partner decided that business was not for him, and is actually much happier as an employee and was able to transition to that. So we're both in much better places. He's happy being an employee. I'm much happier with my business, and the business really significantly increased since that time. But at the time, it felt really painful and very difficult.
You know, I think there's two really important things about what you just said. And the first is, by you making a really difficult decision, you actually opened the door for someone else to help them be happier. But you were the one who had to take the risky move. And I think there's so often, which brings me to my second point, which is, I think so often we build our business to what we think we want it to look like. Right. And then when we get to that place, it actually isn't serving us. But we feel like we've put all this time, energy, and money into getting us here, so we have to stay. And I love that you took that risk of, okay, I'm going to go out on my own. And then what were you thinking when you were like, okay, I'm going out on my own. This is it. I don't want to do this anymore.
Is my business partner going to hate me? Are the other people who know both of us going to think that I abandoned my business partner? Is it going to work? Are my great ideas that he's not on board for, maybe they're not so great. Maybe that's why he's not. So it was very scary, both from a relationship point of view and what if this doesn't work? There's no one to fall back on at that point.
Right. Was failure ever on your horizon?
In my head, I think it was. Probably not in reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the rest of you?
I think I had a pretty interesting episode involving failure in 2019 for sure. Many of you who know me know that I set out at the start of 2019 saying that I was going to go for a whole million at the end of that year, and that was my goal. And I was obsessed with it. I hired for it, built the systems for it, did all of the things. But then it didn't go there. That's not even close at the end of the year. And it was something that I made my peace with very early, because that's not the kind of thing that comes as a surprise in the last month. So I knew quite early it wasn't going to that. And the reason it wasn't going to that was because I was in that moment targeting a few types of clients that were really not right for the type of business that we were building. We found that we were in touch with the wrong people, things fell through, and that kind of stuff only happens when the system isn't serving you as well as you hoped it would, I guess. That's my sort of learning from that. But what came out of it was that I was really able to clean out the stables a whole lot. I took a big, long look at who is our client list, where's our money coming from, are we having fun, is this leveraging the best parts of the team that we want to keep? And what was like, I went into, I'm not going to lie, I went into a couple of months of just, I need to burrow into my bed and die because I can't face the world. And I put it all on hold. I renewed myself a little, I guess is the good way to say it. It didn't feel like that at the time. But I came out of it with like so much clarity. It is I've always believed that failure will lead to big learnings. I've had many episodes of it before. It's just that I didn't expect such a large failure by most definition to be something that I would be okay with and then be like, okay, wait, let's take out a couple more $100,000 while we're there. And then see how this goes next year. So that was my big, I'm almost surprised that I'm still standing kind of failure that taught me tons.
Yeah. And it brought, it can bring you to your knees sometimes. Just have you question everything. And I think what I really like about what you said is, the numbers don't lie. If I had kept down this path, I would have been in some serious financial doo-doo. And you just said, no, this isn't working for me. Let's just shift it. And like Andrea, you were like, pivot time, this isn't working. And I think we've got to be in tune with when things are not going well. It's either because we have the wrong systems in place, or the wrong process in place, or we're not doing something, or it doesn't fit us. And it's okay if what we've built doesn't fit. It's okay to pivot in order to grow. And sometimes growth, I think, isn't, exponential. It's not always adding on. I think it's Dr. Shefali who said that the true growth is deconstructive. We actually have to pull apart what it is that we have to better understand who we are, what we bring to the table, where we're going. And, I love that you took the leap to do that. And it does. It takes time. And sometimes, sometimes you don't have a choice because things just are not going the way you want. And entrepreneurship is risky. Like you're never going to work harder or put more energy into anything than running your own business. And we have to be okay with having not everything work out. And yeah, $1 million was on your goal. We're going to call that an impossible business goal for 2019, but it's not a goal we're going to remove from your vision. It just means 2019, in order to reach that, we had to restructure a little bit, or I say you had to restructure, you had to reposition, refigure out where your biggest impact was. And, we got to keep the $1 million on the vision if that's what you want, but it doesn't mean it has to be by December 31st, 2020. But let's at least move forward as if that is a reality.
Yeah. I think I have made failure too personal. That has been one of the things that I have done. Exactly what you're saying, Sheila. I've made it so much about me. And I think, it comes from many sources. My dad had, and this is really interesting, my dad was a serial entrepreneur and had many, many different businesses. And he failed big.
Right.
Like we're talking house, we're talking big. Wow. So I think that when I was young, it's really interesting that I decided to go down this route instead of going into the traditional world like my mother did, because this is risky in many ways. But we now know that the economy is changing anyway, and that what we thought were safe traditional jobs, I'm in in Ottawa, in the land of safe jobs, it's not the same. It's not what it was like when we were growing up. But when I have failed, I've made it too much about me, too personal. Mm-hmm. Hit me in the solar plexus way too much.
Yeah. And I think that's so common. You know, I'll hear about women who are like, well, I didn't make my revenue. I'm not going to hit my goal this year. You know, I suck. This is the pits. I can't sell. I don't know how to do this. And it's just a load of hooey.
Yeah.
All it means if you're not hitting your numbers or you're not hitting what you want is there's something in the systems or the marketing or the sales that just needs tweaking and improving. Maybe it's the messaging. Maybe it's who you're talking to. But I think I love what you're saying, and I hope that the listeners are listening really close, is we have to remove who we are from the results of our business. And especially if, you know, your sales process is either in person, face-to-face, or over the phone and having conversations, the reality is we're going to get no probably more often than we get yes. But no is not a reflection on who we are. It's that they are not ready for that offer at that time. Yeah. And, you know, we can try and coach them through the buying decision. We can do all that. And that tactic's up to you. You got to do what works for you. But we have to remove our self-worth from the outcome that we get. Because at the end of the day, if you make a sale or you don't make a sale, you are still the same woman that's sitting on the other side of it.
We have two sayings, one of which is no is actually one of the best answers you can get, because the worst answer is a maybe. Because then you keep on your line for a long time, right? Yep. And then the other thing is we call it NFL, no fear of loss. So as salespeople, we think we have to go in like that and not, as you said, Megan, not take it personally. That it is just, hey, it's not the right match at this point. They might come back to me at some point, and I'm okay with that. And I think I'm also good at failing, really good at failing. But what I've done is I have two things. One is I position it as trying. Like if we think of that story we hear all the time about the light bulb and Edison and how many times he tried something, right? Well, that didn't work. Now I'm going to try this. And I feel like when I talk to some women entrepreneurs, I think we get that even the tries have to be perfect.
Yeah.
Right? Like if I don't try something, I'm not gaining any data. I'm not being able to make a decision based on some other information that's coming in my way. So I try and frame it all that way, in the sense of, yeah, that didn't work. Okay. So, all right, now I know it doesn't work. And then I also justify it in my head. It's like, if I can keep one woman entrepreneur from making all the mistakes I did, then they will have been worth it, because I'm now passing that information on. What they do with it is totally up to them. But Andrea, I love this, is that a lot of the times it's about a legal agreement. So get it in writing, read them.
Absolutely. Thanks for the plug. No, I agree with you, Wendy. I a couple of summers ago, I read one of the Tim Ferriss books.
Titans.
Tools of Titans. One of the things that really struck me was that spirit of experimentation that he carries with him. It is never about winning or losing. It's, let's see what will happen if I do this, right? And he keeps a record of it. And he talks about having, notebooks filled with these experimentations so that if something goes well, he can go back and say, okay, this is what I did, over 3 weeks or a month or whatever to get to this result. And I think what's helped me become a lot more comfortable with the concept of failing is viewing it as an experimentation. Susan, you and I were having this conversation recently where it's just like, I'm going to try, and either it will work out wonderfully, which eternal optimist, so I always think it will work out wonderfully. And if it doesn't, well, now I've learned, and maybe I need to tweak this, or maybe it works out and it, as Sheila was saying, it's not what you wanted. And now you're like, oh, yeah. I thought I wanted that, but actually I don't. But I think keeping that spirit of experimentation and not putting so much pressure on the outcome, like we can only control the input, right? We can't control the outcome. So control where we can and kind of leave the rest to the universe.
When I look at my one number solution, the thing I take heart in is Seth Godin. If anyone loves Seth Godin like I do, and he says, if you don't look at your first thing you shipped and are embarrassed beyond belief, you shipped too late. And so I'm pleased to say I shipped right on time. Because when I look at what it is now, if I had waited to get it to where it's now, it would not be, because I wouldn't have tested each iteration with my clients.
Absolutely.
Go, oh, okay, they need this. Oh, this is a friction point. How can I solve that? If I waited every time to try and be perfect, nothing would have ever shipped and I wouldn't be where I am. So that's where I look at try.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think sometimes when I see a woman building something new or a new vertical within her business, the word we put in front of it is a beta. And all of a sudden that gives people permission for it not to be perfect. And so sometimes you got to game the system a little bit. I love that.
Yeah, and I tend to think of classic entrepreneurs as being really creative. Like that is what, when you think about the great ones, you think about how they were impatient with something, and they saw it as being a better way to do it, and they created a new system, and there's all this creativity as a result of trying. I was just reading that the Americans are getting their early acceptance into colleges, and there was all these people commenting on Twitter about how they had not been accepted into their first college, their college of choice, and they were so embarrassed and so horrified. And then all of these super successful women, one of them being, I don't know, the woman who did the Me Too story, who won the Pulitzer Prize, Jodi Kantor, saying, thank God I didn't get into the college of my choice, because the one that I did get into allowed me to just really be exploratory. And look at her, she's a Pulitzer Prize lady, right? Yeah,
I love that. You know, I think sometimes the word that I keep is coming up in our conversation is the word try, and you just got to try. And, you know, Brooke Castillo talks about two different kinds of failure. There's the worthy failure, which is where you actually try to get a result and then it fails. And so, you know, a great example of that, I always talk about the online launches, and I don't know how many online launches I've had to date. And for the most part, most of them have, by all standards, failed. They did not generate the return I wanted. I took a loss on them. You know, I didn't get to do what it is that I wanted. But each of those, if I hadn't just tried it, I then wouldn't have had the insight to know what to do differently next time. And I have to say, and I'm not doing this just, well, no, I'm just going to own it. My last 3 launches have been incredibly successful because I have learned from all those skinned knee failures. And so she talks about this idea of a worthy fail where you try. Then she talks about an escape fail. And escape failures are where we want the end result, but we keep procrastinating or stepping out from or not trying it so that you can keep yourself safe. Is there anywhere in your businesses that you would like to have a worthy fail as opposed to an escape fail, knowing that we all have both in us? So for me, an escape fail would be the online world. You know, I want to create a larger audience. I want more people to hear my message. And I was working with Susan in the fall, and there was this message about consistency that kept coming up. So Sheila, you want to be heard. You keep saying that the online world's not working for you, but you are not consistent. You're not showing up regularly. And she's right. I was putting out a podcast every other week because I knew I could do it. I didn't want to do it every week because it was feeling like too much pressure. But since I've been putting it out every week, all of a sudden people have been noticing and listening and seeing. And, you know, I think that's a great example of an escape fail where I wasn't doing what it was that I wanted the result for because it felt uncomfortable, or it felt like it was too much, or I didn't have the knowledge to do it. Whereas I'm now putting out the podcast. It can fail. That's fine. I at least tried it.
I have one. I think for me, that was like this speaking gig situation. I've hid behind the fact that I'm not a stage person for, I want to say 3 decades, because the very first time I went on stage, I ran away and refused to perform. And I've actually had that follow me through my life. And I said, I don't want to do, in-person well, I can do one-on-one conversations. And I keep saying for a joke that my magic number is 7. Up to 7, I can do really well. But beyond that, I lose my ability to make eye contact. And so I don't like speaking. And this held me back for a really long time, despite many of you saying to me that my space of genius was when I was speaking to people, and delivering messages and telling them things that they might not have heard before. But I just kept not doing it. And finally, again, serendipity is what I call it. I went to a conference in New York last year in which I saw a bunch of high-profile people speak and, high-profile brands speak. And I'm like, you cannot be serious. This cannot be the best representation of my kind. And it's almost like it took me a minute to feel like this is my moral responsibility. And that's when I spotted that it was an escape failure, as you describe it. I was trying to be like, I'll never get successful because I don't like to speak. And now I'm like, no, I'm going to learn how to speak because I know better.
Yeah. I was on my 2019 vision, I had do a TED Talk on the vision. And I talked about doing a TED Talk, and I looked at the do a TED Talk, and then I was talking to my coach, and I said, I'm really disappointed I didn't get a TED Talk this year. And he says, how many did you apply for? And there was like this silence sort of emanating through the phone call. And I just, 2? He was like, I'm sorry, I don't think that counts. So this year I've hired somebody who can help me get on a TED stage, because obviously I'm not doing it myself. So I want that result. So now we're going to have a worthy failure. We're going to at least try, but we're going to properly try.
I think that's such a key point about the properly try. And Sheila, I remember you talking to me about that, where it's like, well, I don't want to hire someone else to do my write-in for me because I'm a good writer and I enjoy it. And you were like, wonderful, but you have to do it. And so just acknowledging, right? Like if you say you want something, be true to yourself. Do you really want to do it? And if you do, then either you have to figure out a way to do it yourself or you hire someone to do it. But I think being honest with yourself as well as to, is this something that I really want to do, or is this something that I feel that I should do? Like whenever you're feeling the shoulds, it's a good indication that you're not in alignment, right?
Yeah.
So just being honest with yourself, because sometimes it is. Sometimes it's, well, I don't really want to do it, but everyone else says that I should do it. So I'll kind of half-ass it. And then I can say, well, it didn't work out, but I tried. It's not really a try.
Right. The committed try.
Yeah. And when you hear the word should, I've said this many times, I think I said to you, Sheila, is that there's a belief that precedes should. So every time you hear yourself say should, what's the belief that precedes it?
Right.
And do you agree with it? Are you going to be beholden to it?
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's like a committed decision or an interested decision.
Yeah. I was just thinking about this year, apart from business, I took up tennis because I turned 50 this year. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get out of my house. I'm going to meet people. I'm going to, get out of the basement. So I took up tennis, and I haven't done tennis since I was 13. And I go onto this tennis court thinking that, I'm pretty good. I can remember how to do this from when I was 13. And everybody's awesome. Everybody, these women are like, and I'm like, every single game I lose. And I come home and my 12-year-old's like, how'd you do, Mom? I'm like, I lost. What was really interesting about this was I didn't take it personally. Mm-hmm. I made a decision. Well, it's just a matter of these women have been playing all winter and I'm just starting, and I just need to learn, and then I'll kick their butts. Yeah. I just need to learn how to do it again. So it was really interesting.
So just to close us off, I think it's important to do goal setting and, do it properly and go through the process. But what if you took one of those goals and made it an impossible business goal? Something that is so far out of reach that it should be, to use that word, impossible to reach, but then work towards that and be okay failing at meeting that goal, because what you're going to learn along the journey is going to be so powerful and is going to fuel you to where it is that you want to go. And ladies, if we're going to grow our businesses, we got to be okay failing, because if it fails, it just means there's a great place to learn and you are still the amazing woman on the other side.
Thank you for listening to Insight. If you enjoyed listening, do us a solid and leave us a review. It helps keep us motivated to put our time into producing episodes of value. Thank you.